Chris here. I'm going to talk about your training and lineage and culture as it applies towards self-defense training. Uh, in a self-defense situation, the main thing is, can you move and do what you need to do to be safe? That's the main thing. But that doesn't mean that stuff like culture and history aren't important to know. You don't necessarily need to memorize every teacher going back 300 years in exact lineage. That's a choice you can make, but that's not required. What I'm thinking about is you should at least be able to know where things come from in terms of what area and time period. And this isn't just for trivia. This is the fact that any self-defense or combative art you're learning was developed based on people having to fight under certain conditions. They were using certain weapons against other types of weapons in a certain kind of area. And that is basically what shapes all these different martial arts you see around the world. Some techniques are primarily based because the people were using, weapons on horseback, or that people were fighting in jungles, or any kind of possible situation. People tried to do the best in those situations, and they developed all these techniques around it. So, with that in mind, the thing is, maybe you're just learning, say, at some defense place, and they're giving you stuff that's pretty effective, but you don't know where it comes from. Well, part of the thing is that if you're able to look at where it comes from, you might be able to find broad techniques that may help add to what you have, or allow you to figure out what to modify or not modify. For example, there's a lot of traditional arts that people will say are primarily striking arts. And you kind of look back and you find out that they actually had grappling in them too, but it ends up getting lost over time. Part of that's because at the time we didn't really have a lot of really good grappling tournaments that were televised and stuff. And some of that too might have been stuff because a lot of the grappling techniques were designed to seriously injure people, the instructors were not feeling safe in sharing that to their students, either because of who the students were, jealousy, or all kinds of things. You got to remember, of the last century, a lot of places where our martial arts are coming from, there's a lot of warfare and a lot of social upheaval. So people might be walking out with just a little bit of training, and they stuck with what they had, but they didn't get the full picture. But these are things you can find out if you know where it comes from. Right now, we live in an era where you can look everything up on the internet. There is scholars doing a ton of research, and if you know when and where it comes from, you can actually start looking up records. You can find records, written records from the people they were fighting, who can say stuff about them, and you can start to put together what is the real breadth of what you can do. And then it gives you context. So if you, say, have a martial art that came from spear fighting and they do punches in a certain way, you're like, well, that's not so efficient. Why would you take your arm down here to punch up, when you could keep your arm up? Oh, well, since their arm was always going down there for the spear movement, their muscles were well built to do this, and it was just easier to have them punch from the same position than to try and teach them a whole new way. Oh, yeah, okay, so that makes sense, right? So things that may have been discarded may have made sense in other ways. Things that, you picked up, or things that you're currently missing may already exist. There's all this context you could pick up and add to your training. So that's number one. Just practical, makes it easier to learn. Second thing, it's respect. If it's combative, someone used this for real to survive some dangerous situations. Fairly good odds that many people had to keep passing this down under serious situations, and it's gotten to you. And so someone is giving you the gift of hard-earned experience so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, so that you can keep yourself safe and you can keep the people you care about safe. That, I believe, is worth at least some acknowledgement. Again, you don't have to have an altar, you don't have to memorize everyone's name. You at least should be able to point to the people, in general, who are responsible for that, and recognize that. That's my thing. Right now, I've seen a resurgence in all these people who are yeah, World War II knife fighting. And you come to find out that the guy who really pushed World War II knife fighting in World War II did a lot of his training in Shanghai. So, probably worth taking a look to see who or what he might have learned from, because, well, he may have taken what was effective for him in that situation. There might be some other tools that are really cool, or some people who are very expert who you could then enhance what you're doing, on top of what you've gotten passed down. So lineage and culture, definitely something worth consider keeping a part of as part of your self-defense training. It doesn't have to be your primary focus. Obviously what you need to do to stay safe is the primary focus, but these are tools to help you do that.